Wealth and honor are but spring dreams at the fifth watch of the night. Fame and achievements are like floating clouds in the sky. Even the kinship before our eyes isn't truly reliable. Love and affection can turn into hatred instead. Don't fasten the golden yoke around your neck, nor bind yourself with the jade fetters. With a pure heart and few desires, break free from the mortal world. Be content with a life of joy and stay true to your nature. This CI poem, Shijang Yu, serves as words of admonition to the world, urging people to sever their infatuation and lead a carefree life. Take, for instance, the natural bond between a father and a son, and the close relationship among brothers. They are like branches from the same root, an unbreakable connection. Although Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism are distinct from one another, the two words, filial piety and fraternal love, are always emphasized. As for having children and grandchildren, that's a matter for the next generation, and it's impossible to make everything completely perfect. As the old saying goes, children and grandchildren have their own blessings. Don't toil like a horse or an ox for them. When it comes to husband and wife, although it's said that they are bound together by the red thread around the waist and the crimson cord tied to their feet, ultimately, their relationship is like flesh that's been cut and pasted together, and it can be separated if necessary. Another common saying goes, husband and wife are like birds in the same forest. When dawn breaks, they fly away separately. In recent times, human relationships have become cold and mean. The relationships between fathers and sons, and among brothers, are rather ordinary. Although children and grandchildren are dearly loved, it still can't compare to the affection between a husband and a wife. People indulge in the love within the boudoir and listen to the words whispered on the pillow. How many people have been bewitched by women and done things that are neither filial nor fraternal? These people are definitely not those of noble character. Now, let's talk about the story of Zhuang Sheng beating the basin. It's not to encourage disharmony between husband and wife. Instead, it aims to help people distinguish between the virtuous and the foolish, see through the true and the false, and gradually let go of their infatuation from the very start. Thus, their six senses will gradually become pure, and their Taoist thoughts will grow, bringing them real benefits. In the past, someone watched a farmer transplanting rice seedlings and composed 4 lines of a poem, which showed great insight. The poem goes, holding green seedlings in hand, I plant them in the wild field. Bowing my head, I can see the sky reflected in the water. Only when the 6 senses are pure can one become a true rice plant, a metaphor for a person of virtue. Taking a step back is actually moving forward. It is said that during the late Zhou dynasty, there was a highly virtuous man named Zhuang Zhou, with the courtesy name Zixiu. He was from Menji in the state of Song. He once served as an official in Qiwan County of the Zhou dynasty. He studied under a great sage, who was the founder of Taoism, Li Er, with the courtesy name Bo Yang. Li Bo Yang was born with white hair, and people called him Lao Zi. Zhuang Sheng once took a daytime nap and dreamed that he turned into a butterfly, fluttering merrily among the gardens and flowers, feeling extremely content. When he woke up, he still felt as if his arms were flapping like wings, and he was very astonished. After that, he had this dream from time to time. One day, while chatting about the Book of Changes in front of Lao Zi during a break, Zhuang Sheng told his teacher about this dream. Lao Zi, being a great sage, knew the origin of the 3 lifetimes and pointed out to Zhuang Sheng the reasons of his previous life. Zhuang Sheng was originally a white butterfly at the beginning of chaos. When the number 1 generated water and the number 2 generated wood, the trees thrived and the flowers were in full bloom. The white butterfly gathered the essence of all flowers, absorbed the beauty of the sun and the moon, and with the passage of time, it became immortal, with wings as large as wheels. Later, it flew to the Yaokai and stole the stamens of the flat peach. It was pecked to death by the green Luan, which was guarding the flowers under the Queen Mother of the West. Its spirit remained indispersed and was reincarnated in the world as Zhuang Zhou. Because of his extraordinary natural talent and firm Taoist heart, he studied under Lao Zi and learned the teachings of purity and inaction. Now, after being enlightened by Lao Zi about his previous life, he was like a person waking up from a dream. He felt the wind blowing under his armpits, as if he were a butterfly again, and regarded the rise and fall, gain and loss of the world as flowing clouds and running water, without any attachments. Laozi knew that he had understood, and he imparted all the secrets of the Tao Te Ching with its 5,000 characters. Zhuangsheng silently recited, studied, and practiced, and was finally able to separate his body and hide his form, and perform miraculous transformations. From then on, he gave up his official position as an official in Qiwan County, bid farewell to Laozi, and traveled around to seek the Tao. Although he followed the teachings of purity, he didn't completely cut off the relationship between husband and wife. He married 3 wives successively. His first wife died of illness at an early age. His second wife was divorced because of her misbehavior. Now, let's talk about his third wife, surnamed Tian. She was a woman from the Tian clan of the state of Qi. When Zhuangsheng traveled to the state of Qi, the Tian clan valued his character and married their daughter to him. This Mrs. Tian was more beautiful than his previous 2 wives, her skin was as white as snow and ice, and she was as graceful as a fairy. Zhuangsheng was not a lecherous person, but he also respected her very much. They were truly affectionate, just like fish and water. King Wei of Chu heard of Zhuangsheng's virtue and sent an envoy with 100 pieces of gold, 1,000 bolts of brocade, a comfortable carriage pulled by 4 horses, to invite him to be the prime minister. Zhuangsheng sighed and said, "A sacrificial ox is dressed in beautiful embroidery and eats grass and beans. It sees the hard work of the plowing ox and boasts of its own glory. But when it is led into the ancestral temple and the knife and chopping block are in front of it, it wants to be a plowing ox but can't." So he refused the offer. He took his wife and returned to the state of Song, and lived in seclusion on Nanhua mountain in Kozhu. One day, Zhuangsheng went out for a walk at the foot of the mountain and saw many overgrown tombs. He sighed and said, "There is no difference between the young and the old, and the virtuous and the foolish all end up in the same place. People are buried in tombs, but how can those in tombs become people again?" He sighed for a while. After walking a few more steps, he suddenly saw a new tomb with the soil on it not yet dry. A young woman, dressed all in white mourning clothes, sat beside this tomb, waving a white silk fan in her hand and fanning the tomb continuously. Zhuangsheng was surprised and asked her, "Madam, who is buried in this tomb? Why are you fanning the soil with a fan? There must be a reason for it." The woman didn't get up but continued to fan the soil as before. With a voice as sweet as the chirping of birds, she said some unreasonable words. It was truly, when heard, it makes 1,000 people laugh, when said, it adds to the shame. The woman said, "The person buried in the tomb is my late husband. Unfortunately, he passed away and was buried here. He loved me when he was alive, and I couldn't bear to part with him after his death. He left a message saying that if I wanted to remarry someone else, I should wait until the funeral was over and the soil on the tomb was dry before I could get married. I thought, how could the newly piled soil dry quickly? That's why I'm fanning it with a fan." Zhuangsheng smiled and thought, this woman is so impatient. She even said that they loved each other when he was alive. If this is what she calls love, what would it be like if they didn't love each other? Then he asked, "It's very easy to make this new soil dry. Because your wrists are delicate and soft, and you don't have the strength to fan it effectively. I'd like to offer my help on your behalf." Only then did the woman stand up and curtsy deeply, saying, "Thank you, sir." She handed the white silk fan to Zhuangsheng with both hands. Zhuangsheng used his Taoist magic, raised his hand and fanned the top of the tomb several times. All the moisture disappeared, and the soil dried immediately. The woman smiled happily and thanked him, saying, "Thank you for your effort, sir." She gently pulled out a silver hairpin from beside her temple with her delicate hand and gave it to Zhuangsheng together with the silk fan as a token of gratitude. Zhuangsheng refused the silver hairpin but accepted the silk fan. The woman left happily. Zhuangzi was indignant in his heart. When he returned home, he sat in the thatched cottage, looked at the silk fan, and sighed 4 lines. "Those who are not enemies will not come together, and when enemies are together, when will it end? If I had known there would be no affection after death, I should have ended the love and affection during his lifetime." Mrs. Tian heard Zhuangsheng's sighs from behind and came forward to ask. Zhuangsheng, as a man of Tao, was also called sir by his wife. Mrs. Tian said, "Sir, what are you sighing about? Where did you get this fan?" Zhuangsheng told her the story of the woman fanning the tomb and her words about wanting the soil to dry so that she could remarry. This fan is the one she used to fan the soil. She gave it to me as a thank you for my help. After hearing this, Mrs. Tian suddenly showed an angry look. She cursed the woman in the air, saying she was extremely unvirtuous. She said to Zhuangsheng, "Such a heartless woman is rare in the world." Zhuangsheng then said another 4 lines. Everyone says they love each other when they are alive, but after death, everyone wants to fan the tomb. It's easy to draw a dragon or a tiger, but hard to draw their bones. You can know a person's face but not their heart. Mrs. Tian was furious when she heard this. As the old saying goes, anger can make one forget family ties and ignore etiquette. In her anger, Mrs. Tian didn't care about her dignity. She spat in Zhuangsheng's face and said, "Although all people are human, there are differences between the virtuous and the foolish. How can you casually say such words and lump all women in the world together? Aren't you wronging the good with the bad? Aren't you afraid of committing a sin?" Zhuangsheng said, "Don't just talk big. Suppose, unfortunately, I, Zhuangzhou, die. With your beautiful appearance at such a young age, can you really endure 3 to 5 years of widowhood?" Mrs. Tian said, "A loyal minister will not serve 2 masters, and a chaste woman will not remarry. Have you ever seen a woman from a good family eat the tea of 2 families and sleep in the beds of 2 men? If it unfortunately happens to me, I would never do such a shameless thing. Not to mention 3 to 5 years, I would never do it even in my whole life. I still have some backbone even in my dreams." Zhuangsheng said, "It's hard to say, it's hard to say." Mrs. Tian cursed and said, "A woman with ambition is better than a man. You are so heartless, marrying one after another. You think others have the same ideas as you. We women are faithful to one husband, and we can stand firm on our principles. How could we say such things and make ourselves the laughing stock of later generations? You're not dead yet, but you're wrongly accusing others like this." She snatched the silk fan from Zhuangsheng's hand and tore it to pieces. Zhuangsheng said, "Don't be angry. It's good if you can really keep your promise like this." After that, there was no more talk about it. A few days later, Zhuangsheng suddenly fell ill, and his condition worsened day by day. Mrs. Tian was at the bedside, crying. Zhuangsheng said, "My illness is so serious that our farewell is just around the corner. It's a pity that the silk fan was torn to pieces the other day. If it were still here, I could give it to you to fan my tomb." Mrs. Tian said, "Sir, don't worry too much. I've read books and know the rules of propriety. I will stay with you until the end and have no intention of remarrying. If you don't believe me, I'm willing to die in front of you to show my loyalty." Zhuangsheng said, "I can see your noble ambition, madam. I, Zhuangzhou, can die without regret." After saying this, he stopped breathing. Mrs. Tian cried over his body. Of course, she had to ask the neighbors on both sides to prepare the shroud, coffin, and other things for the funeral. Mrs. Tian put on a white mourning dress. She was really sad every day and cried every night. Every time she thought of the love between her and Zhuangsheng when he was alive, she was in a trance, forgetting to eat and sleep. Some farmers in the front and back of the mountain knew that Zhuangsheng was a hermit who avoided fame. Those who came to offer condolences were not as many as in the city. On the 7th day, suddenly a young and handsome scholar appeared. He had a face as white as powdered, lips as red as painted, and was extremely handsome and charming. He was dressed in a purple robe, a black hat, an embroidered sash, and red shoes. He was accompanied by an old servant and claimed to be the grandson of the king of Chu. He said that he had made an appointment with Mr. Zhuang Zixiu in the past and wanted to become his disciple. Today, he specially came to visit. When he saw that Zhuangsheng was dead, he said, "What a pity." He quickly took off his colored clothes, asked the old servant to take out a white mourning dress from the luggage and put it on. He bowed 4 times in front of the spirit tablet and said, "Mr. Zhuang, I'm unlucky not to have the chance to meet you and receive your teachings. I'm willing to observe 100 days of mourning for you to express my respect and admiration." After saying this, he bowed 4 more times, wiped away his tears, and stood up. Then he asked to meet Mrs. Tian. Mrs. Tian refused at first. The grandson of the king of Chu said, according to the ancient etiquette, friends of the same family don't need to avoid each other's wives and concubines. Besides, I have a master-disciple agreement with Mr. Zhuang. Mrs. Tian had to step out of the morning hall to meet the grandson of the king of Chu and exchanged some greetings with him. As soon as Mrs. Tian saw the handsome appearance of the grandson of the king of Chu, she felt a sense of love for him. She just regretted that there was no way to get close to him. The grandson of the king of Chu said, although Mr. Zhuang is dead, I still can't forget my admiration for him. I would like to borrow your house and stay here for 100 days. One is to observe the mourning for my late master, and the other is that if there are any works left by my late master, I would like to borrow them to read and learn from his teachings. Mrs. Tian said, with the friendship between our families, you can stay as long as you like. Then she prepared a meal to entertain him. After the meal, Mrs. Tian took out all of Zhuangzi's works, Zhuangzi, also known as Nanhua Zhenjing, and Laozi's Tao Ti Ching, with its 5,000 characters, and presented them to the grandson of the king of Chu. The grandson of the king of Chu thanked her warmly. A spirit tablet was set up in the middle of the thatched cottage, and the grandson of the king of Chu settled in the left room. Every day, Mrs. Tian used the excuse of crying in front of the spirit tablet to talk to the grandson of the king of Chu in the left room. As the days passed, they became more and more familiar with each other. They exchanged glances and couldn't control their feelings. The grandson of the king of Chu was only half in love, but Mrs. Tian was completely infatuated. What she was happy about was that they were in a remote mountainous area, and even if she did something wrong, no one would spread the word. What she regretted was that her husband had just died not long ago, and besides, it was difficult for a woman to take the initiative to express her feelings to a man. After a few more days, about half a month had passed. The woman was restless and couldn't hold back any longer. She secretly called the old servant into the room, rewarded him with good wine, and soothed him with kind words. Then she asked casually, "Has your master been married yet?" The old servant said, "No, he hasn't." The woman then asked, "What kind of person does your master want to marry?" The old servant, slightly drunk, said, "My young master, the grandson of the king of Chu, once said that if he could marry a woman as charming as you, madam, he would be perfectly satisfied." The woman said, "Is that really what he said? Are you lying?" The old servant said, "I'm an old man. How could I tell a lie?" The woman said, "I beg you, sir, to act as the matchmaker. If he doesn't mind, I'm willing to serve your master." The old servant said, "My master also told me that it would be a good marriage, but the words master and disciple are an obstacle, and he's afraid it will arouse people's gossip." The woman said, "Your master and my late husband only had an empty promise during his lifetime. There was no real act of learning from him as a master, so they can't be considered master and disciple. Moreover, we live in a remote and desolate mountain area with few neighbors. Who will gossip about it? You must do your best to make this happen, and I'll treat you to a cup of wedding wine." The old servant agreed. Before leaving, the woman called him back and instructed, "If he agrees, no matter what time it is, come and tell me in my room. I'll be waiting here especially." After the old servant left, the woman waited eagerly. She looked towards the morning hall dozens of times, wishing she could tie the handsome young man's feet with a thin rope and pull him in to embrace him. As it was getting close to dusk, the woman became impatient and walked into the morning hall in the dark to listen for sounds from the left room. Suddenly, there was a noise on the spirit seat. The woman was startled, thinking that the spirit of the deceased had appeared. She quickly went back to the inner room to get a lamp to shine. It turned out that the old servant was drunk and lying stiffly on the table of the spirit seat. The woman didn't dare to scold him, nor did she dare to call him. She had to go back to her room. Time passed slowly, and another night passed. The next day, she saw the old servant walking around but not coming to report on the matter. The woman was itching with curiosity and called him into the room again to ask about what had happened before. The old servant said, "It won't work, it won't work." The woman said, "Why not? Could it be that you didn't make things clear last night?" The old servant said, "I told him everything, and my young master also had a point. He said that there's no need to mention your beauty, madam. And since there was no formal master-disciple relationship, that can be put aside. But there are 3 things that aren't right, so it's difficult to give you a positive reply, madam. The woman said, what are those 3 things? The old servant said, my young master said, there's a coffin in the hall. How can I bear to hold the wedding ceremony with you, madam, and it doesn't look proper either. Secondly, Mr. Zhuang and you were loving husband and wife. Moreover, he was a renowned and virtuous man of high moral character. My talent and learning are far inferior to his, and I'm afraid you'll look down on me. Thirdly, my luggage hasn't arrived yet. I came here empty-handed, and I have no means to afford the betrothal gifts and the expenses for the wedding feast. Because of these 3 things, it won't work. The woman said, you don't need to worry about these 3 things. The coffin isn't fixed in place. There's an empty and dilapidated room behind the house. Just call a few farm hands to carry it out. That takes care of the first thing. As for the second thing, my late husband wasn't really a renowned and virtuous man of high moral character. He couldn't manage his family well in the first place, which led to the incident of divorcing his previous wife, and people called him lacking in virtue. King Wei of Chu admired his empty reputation and offered generous gifts to invite him to be the prime minister, but he knew he wasn't capable enough and fled here. Last month, when he was walking alone at the foot of the mountain, he met a widow who was fanning the tomb, waiting for the soil on the tomb to dry before remarrying. My late husband flirted with her, took her silk fan, and fanned the soil for her. He brought that silk fan back, and I tore it to pieces. A few days before he died, I even had an argument with him. What kind of love was there? Your master is young, eager to learn, and has great potential. Besides, he is of noble status as the grandson of the king of Chu, and I'm a woman from the Tian clan. Our family backgrounds match. Now that he's here, it's a match made in heaven. As for the third thing, I'll take care of the betrothal gifts and the expenses for the wedding feast. Who needs betrothal gifts? The wedding feast is also a minor matter. I've saved up 20 taels of private silver and will give it to your master to make a new set of clothes. You go and convey this to him again. If it's settled, tonight is an auspicious day for the wedding, and we'll get married. The old servant accepted the 20 taels of silver and reported back to the grandson of the king of Chu. The grandson of the king of Chu had to agree. The old servant then reported back to the woman. The woman was overjoyed at that moment. She took off her mourning clothes, reapplied her powder, painted her lips red again, and put on a new set of colorful clothes. She asked the old servant to call the nearby farm hands to carry Zhuang Sheng's coffin and place it in the dilapidated room at the back. Then she cleaned the thatched cottage and prepared for the wedding feast. There is a poem to prove this. The pretty widow is especially charming. The grandson of the king of Chu is interested and teases her more. Who said, a woman should have only one husband? Tonight, she wants to marry this fine son-in-law. That night, the woman tidied up the bridal chamber. The thatched cottage was decorated with brilliant lanterns and candles. The grandson of the king of Chu, dressed in a robe with tassels and a hat, and Mrs. Tian, in a brocade jacket and an embroidered skirt, stood side by side under the wedding candles. The man and the woman were as beautiful as if carved from jade and gilded with gold, indescribably lovely. After they bowed to each other, they held hands affectionately and entered the bridal chamber. After drinking the nuptial cup, they were just about to go to bed and undress when suddenly the grandson of the king of Chu frowned, found it difficult to move even a step, and immediately fell to the ground, rubbing his chest with both hands. He only cried out, "My heartache is unbearable." Mrs. Tian loved the grandson of the king of Chu deeply. Regardless of the shame of her new marriage, she rushed forward to hold him, stroked him, and asked him what was wrong. The grandson of the king of Chu was in so much pain that he couldn't speak. He foamed at the mouth and was on the verge of death. The old servant was in a panic. Mrs. Tian said, "Has the grandson of the king of Chu had this symptom before?" The old servant spoke on his behalf. "This symptom occurs regularly. It may flare up once every year or two. There's no cure for it. There's only one thing that can have an immediate effect when used." Mrs. Tian urgently asked, "What is it?" The old servant said, "The imperial doctor passed on a strange prescription. One must get the brain marrow of a living person and swallow it with warm wine, and the pain will stop immediately. When this disease flared up in the past, the old prince reported to the king of Chu, and a death row prisoner was sent, tied up and killed, and his brain marrow was taken. But how can we get it here in the mountains now? His life is probably over. Mrs. Tian said, it's impossible to get the brain marrow of a living person. But I wonder if the brain marrow of a dead person can be used. The old servant said, the imperial doctor said that for anyone who has been dead for less than 49 days, their brain hasn't dried up yet and can also be used. Mrs. Tian said, my husband has only been dead for more than 20 days. Why not open the coffin and take his brain marrow? The old servant said, I'm afraid you won't agree, madam. Mrs. Tian said, I'm going to become the wife of the grandson of the king of Chu. A woman devotes herself to her husband. I don't even care about my own life, so why should I care about the decaying bones of my late husband? She immediately ordered the old servant to take care of the grandson of the king of Chu, and she herself found an axe for chopping wood. She held the axe in her right hand and a lamp in her left hand. She went to the dilapidated room at the back, placed the lampstand on the coffin lid, rolled up her sleeves, raised the axe with both hands, aimed at the head of the coffin, gritted her teeth, and swung the axe. A woman has little strength. How could she split open the coffin? There was a reason for this. Zhuang Zhou was a man who understood the nature of life and had ordered not to be buried with excessive funerary objects. The coffin was only 3 inches thick, and with one swing of the axe, a piece of wood was chopped off. After several more swings of the axe, the coffin lid cracked open. The woman was gasping for breath when she saw Zhuang Sheng sighing from inside the coffin, pushing open the coffin lid, and sitting up straight. Although Mrs. Tian was heartless, she was still a woman. She was so frightened that her legs went weak, her muscles went numb, and her heart was pounding. The axe fell to the ground unconsciously. Zhuang Sheng said, Madam, help me up. The woman had no choice but to help Zhuang Sheng out of the coffin. Zhuang Sheng held the lamp, and the woman followed him as they entered the room together. The woman knew that the grandson of the king of Chu and his servant were in the room and was very nervous. She took 1 step forward but then stepped back 2 steps. When she finally entered the room and looked around, the furnishings were still as splendid as before, but the grandson of the king of Chu and his servant were nowhere to be seen. Although the woman was secretly surprised and suspicious, she also felt relieved. She tried to excuse herself with clever words and said to Zhuang Sheng, since you died, I've been missing you day and night. Just now, I heard a sound in the coffin. I thought that in ancient times, there were many cases of people coming back to life, and I hoped that you would be resurrected, so I used an axe to open the coffin. Thank goodness, you're really alive. It's truly my great fortune. Zhuang Sheng said, thank you for your kindness, madam. But there's one thing, you haven't been in mourning for long. Why are you wearing a brocade jacket and an embroidered skirt? The woman explained again, when I opened the coffin and saw you alive, I didn't dare to wear the mourning clothes, which are inauspicious. I temporarily wore the brocade clothes to bring good luck. Zhuang Sheng said, all right. There's another thing, why didn't you put the coffin in the main bedroom but left it in the dilapidated room? Is that also a good omen? The woman had nothing to say in reply. Zhuang Sheng also saw the cups and plates arranged on the table but didn't ask why. He asked for warm wine to drink. Zhuang Sheng drank a lot and emptied several cups. The woman didn't know the situation and hoped to rekindle her relationship with her husband and become husband and wife again. She snuggled up to the wine pot, acted coquettishly, and used sweet words to coax Zhuang Sheng to go to bed with her. Zhuang Sheng got very drunk from the wine. He asked for a pen and paper and wrote 4 lines. In the past, I settled the debt of our enmity. When you love me now, I don't love you. If I were to be your husband again, I'm afraid you'd split open my skull with that huge axe. The woman read these 4 lines of poetry and blushed with shame, unable to say a word. Zhuang Sheng wrote another 4 lines. What kind of kindness is there between husband and wife in 100 nights? When they see a new lover, they forget the old one. Just after the coffin was closed, it was split open with an axe. How could you wait to fan the tomb dry? Zhuang Sheng also said, I'll show you 2 people. Zhuang Sheng waved his hand towards the outside. The woman turned around and saw the grandson of the king of Chu and the old servant walking in. The woman was shocked. She turned around and Zhuangsheng was gone. When she turned around again, even the grandson of the king of Chu and his servant had disappeared. There was no such thing as the grandson of the king of Chu and the old servant. These were all Zhuangsheng's methods of separating his body and hiding his form. The woman was in a trance and felt ashamed. She untied the embroidered belt around her waist and hanged herself. Alas, she was really dead. When Zhuangsheng saw that Mrs. Tian was dead, he took her down and placed her in the broken coffin. He used a clay basin as a musical instrument, beat it in rhythm, and sang a song leaning against the coffin. The song went, "The great earth is heartless. It gave birth to me and her. I'm not her husband, and she's not my wife. We met by chance and lived together in one room. When the end comes, there is both union and separation. People are heartless, and their feelings change between life and death. Now that the true feelings have been revealed, why not die? When she was alive, she made choices. When she died, she returned to nothingness. She mourned me and gave me a huge axe. I mourn her and comfort her with these lyrics. When the sound of the axe rang out, I came back to life. When the song is sung, can she know? Alas, I break the clay basin and will no longer beat it. Who is she and who am I?" After singing the song, Zhuangsheng composed another 4 lines of poetry. "If you die, I will bury you. If I die, you will remarry. If I really die, it will be a great joke." Zhuangsheng laughed loudly, smashed the clay basin, set fire to the thatched cottage, and the whole house burned down, including the coffin, which turned into ashes. Only the Tao Ti Ching and the Nanhua Jing were not destroyed. Some people in the mountains picked them up and they have been passed down to this day. Zhuangsheng traveled around everywhere and never married for the rest of his life. Some people say that he met Lao Zi at Hang Pass and followed him away, and he has achieved the great Tao and become an immortal. There is a poem that says, "Wu Qi, who killed his wife, was extremely ignorant. Sun Ling, who was heartbroken, is also laughable." Look at the story of Zhuangsheng beating the basin. He is my teacher who is carefree and unhindered.